Hello dear viewers, a very warm welcome to our channel. It's very good to have you here. In today's video, we are going to have a look at some of the symptoms of a bad piston. The piston is a very crucial component in the internal combustion engine. The piston is a cylindrical metal component that moves up and down inside the cylinder. It has so many functions. When we look at some of the functions, we can generally classify the duty of the piston into three. The first one is conversion of combustion energy. So when the air-fuel mixture inside the cylinder is ignited, the rapid expansion of the gases push the piston down. This downward movement of the piston converts energy released during combustion into rotational motion that will rotate the crankshaft. The downward movement of the piston converts that expansion energy, transfer it to mechanical force and rotate the crankshaft, which will then be used in order to power the entire vehicle. The other function of the piston is, as it is moving up and down, it will act on the gases. For example, when it is moving from TDC down to BDC, it will suck air-fuel mixture into the cylinder. Intake valve will open on the downward stroke of the intake stroke. When piston is moving down, it will cause a suction. So the piston's downward motion creates a vacuum that draws air-fuel mixture into the cylinder. When combustion is done, the upward motion of the piston will scavenge the exhaust. The exhaust that is already filled inside the cylinder will be pushed out of the cylinder by the upward motion of the piston. So intake and exhaust is facilitated by the piston. So another duty of the piston is pumping the gas and undergoing all those gas processes. And finally, the piston has also a function of lubricating and cooling. When piston is moving up and down inside the cylinder, it will help to seal this gap between the piston and the cylinder will be sealed by the piston. And when the piston is moving up and down, the oil scrapper rings will carry oil and lubricate the cylinder. The piston is also help in distributing heat. Heat of combustion will be distributed through the piston. So these are some of the basic functions of the piston. The piston is connected to the crankshaft via a connecting rod. There is a connecting rod that is connected to every piston. The connecting rod transfers the piston motion to the crankshaft. So pistons comes in various sizes and shapes, and they are constructed from different types of material. For example, this one is with a flathead. This one has some kind of crown on the top. So they come in different shapes and size. When you look at this one, it has a little depression on the upper side. So they come in different shapes and size, but unfortunately, their job is similar. Now, what are some of the symptoms of bad piston? The first symptom is excessive oil consumption. When the pistons are worn, as you can see, the gap between the cylinder and the piston, it has to be very narrow, it has to be maintained. But if there is a defective piston, that gap will increase, and increased gap will cause oil to pass into the combustion chamber. So oil will pass into the combustion chamber, then it will get burned and then expelled through the exhaust. That will increase oil consumption. So the number one indication of a damaged piston is excessive oil consumption. Worn or damaged piston can allow engine oil to leak past the cylinder wall gap and the piston ring and then get admitted into the combustion chamber. This leads to high oil consumption. So that is the number one indication. The second symptom of a bad piston is compression loss. As we have said, when piston is moving from BDC up to TDC, it will compress the already admitted air-fuel mixture, especially on the compression stroke. Now, if the piston is damaged, if the piston is worn out, it can cause loss of compression in the affected cylinder, reducing engine power and performance. So another indication of bad piston is compression loss. The other symptom of a bad piston is increased knocking or tapping noise. When piston is moving up and down and when the connecting rod is changing direction, it will cause knocking. If there is excessive side slap, if there is excessive knocking noise, if there is excessive tapping, that could be an indication of a piston going bad. If the gap between the cylinder and the piston has somehow increased due to failing piston, that will cause the piston to slap to the side of the walls, and that will cause excessive noise. So increased knocking or tapping noise can be an indication of a failing piston. The other indication of a bad piston is excessive exhaust smoke. As we have said earlier, if the piston is nice, if the piston rings are good, there has to be no oil admitted into the combustion chamber. But if there is wear, if there is damage, that will cause excessive oil to get admitted into the combustion chamber. So that will increase oil entrance into the combustion chamber will lead to blue or black smoke to be expelled from the cylinder. So when oil is get inside the combustion chamber and oil gets mixed with the air-fuel mixture, that will cause blue smoke to be generated, and that will cause excessive smoke. So excessive smoke is another indication of a bad or failing piston. Another indication of a failing piston is loss of power. Compression loss and increased friction from bad piston can result in noticeable decrease in engine power and acceleration. If the pistons are not sealing properly, if the compression is somehow affected by bad piston, that will cause reduction in power. So decrease in power, loss of power is another indication of a failing piston. That compression loss can also lead to engine misfire. So the sixth symptom of bad piston is engine misfire. For example, if there is loss of compression in this particular cylinder, that will not be producing enough power, that will start to misfire. So engine misfire caused by compression loss as a result of bad piston, any of this piston, could be an indication of a failing piston. The other indication of bad piston is engine overheating. If there is seizure, if there is excessively worn piston, that can increase friction and heat generation within the engine, leading to engine overheating. Excessive vibration can also be an indication of a failing piston. Damaged or unbalanced piston can create increased engine vibration that may be felt throughout the vehicle. If there is some imbalance, if the piston is somehow went out of balance due to some broken part or due to some mechanical damage, that will cause unbalanced mass to spin at high speed, and that will cause engine vibration. So excessive vibration can be caused by damaged piston. Increased fuel consumption is another symptom. As we have said earlier, if the fuel that is getting admitted into the cylinder should be compressed nicely, if however it leaks through this gap, if there is excessive blowby, that could cause increased fuel consumption. Because some of the fuel is being wasted due to damaged piston, that is another indication of a bad piston. So increased fuel consumption when piston rings and pistons are faulty, that will cause the engine to use more fuel than normal, reducing fuel efficiency. So increased emission, difficulty starting, all this can be an indication of a failing piston. If the pistons are not good, then they are not generating nice compression, that will lead to excessive repeated cranking in order to start. Starting is a very challenging part in every engine operation, especially cold start is very difficult. If the pistons are worn and they are not producing enough compression pressure for the engine to get ignited, and that will cause difficulty starting. So compression loss due to bad piston can make the engine very difficult to start, especially when the engine is cold. In most severe cases, piston seizure, piston will seize onto the cylinder wall. That is another indication of bad piston. Bad piston can be caused by, in severe cases, a seizure or severely damaged piston can cause the engine to seize up completely, requiring major overhaul. This is basically if for example there is a problem with the cooling system of the vehicle, pistons expand and then start scuffing the cylinder wall, then that friction, that excessive pressure will make it to seize. If the gap between the piston ring and the cylinder increases, the other problem is there is a very high likely chance of broken piston ring. So piston ring breakage is another indication of a failing piston. Broken or stuck piston rings can disrupt the proper sealing function, and that lead to lots of other problems. So if there is excessive gap and if there is excessive stress on the piston ring, that can cause them to break as a result of a problem. Piston scuffing, piston scoring, if there is some mark on the cylinder wall as a result of a damaged piston, visible damage to the piston surface, visible damage to the cylinder wall can also signify faulty piston, improper installation, lack of lubrication. All this can lead to scuffing the cylinder wall or scuffing on the piston itself. That is also an indication of a faulty piston. And finally, excessive blowby is another symptom of a failing piston. Blowby is leakage of that compression from the cylinder via this gap between the piston and the cylinder. If the air-fuel mixture leaks past this gap, that is called blowby. So if there is a problem with the piston, that will increase the blowby. If somehow the piston is worn and the clearance between these two has increased, that will cause increased blowby. So increased blow-by is another symptom of a failing piston. So these are some of the top symptoms that indicate if you have a failing piston or not. So if any of these symptoms are present, it is very important to have the engine inspected as soon as possible. Catching and addressing piston-related issues early can help prevent more extensive and costly engine repairs down the line. So those are some of the top indicators of a failing piston. If you happen to notice that your engine is having trouble, if your engine is exhibiting any of the mentioned symptoms, that could be caused by a faulty piston. Well, dear viewers, that is all we have for you regarding some of the top symptoms of a failing piston. If you find this video helpful, please smash the like button. If you are new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications so that you will be notified whenever we come up with another video. Until then, stay safe.